Hey, T Sippers. Ooh, I'm so late to the party all day today. It has been most definitely one of those days. I'm on the Trump be nice. Let me give y'all a minute to come in. Come on in, y'all. We gonna start this Sunday out with a prayer, baby, before we get back into this Trump to the dump 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 dump. We still praying for Carmelo. Want God to fix it, restore it, and bring him back home. Fix the injustice that was done to that child. Everybody got to keep their hands to themselves, and we live to see another day. Come on in. Hey, Joe. Hey, Janet. It's been such a long week for more than one reason. Let me cut my sleep devices down. Let's start out with a prayer. Let's go.
Dear Sunday, dear God, I pray for the person that is here with me right now. God, I pray that you bless them abundantly. I pray that on this Sunday, June 14, 2026, Psalm 94, verse 18, that when they think their foot is slipping, that your unfailing love will support them. I pray that on this Sunday, they feel your steadfast love that reaches down from heaven and holds them up. I pray that when their heart is overwhelmed, that you are their constant presence. Be with them in the morning, be with them in the afternoon, be with them in the evening, and all throughout the night. Let them be grateful for every good thing.
50%
of people in this country don't live within driving distance of Whole Foods. Thank you for strength in their body. Thank you for the people around them who love them, and for the countless blessings that you pour out that they take for granted. Lord, I pray that today they experience the support of your love in every area of their life. May they know that they are held by a good Father who delights in blessing his children. God, your word says in Psalm 84, verse 11, the Lord is a sun and shield. The Lord bestows favor and honor. No good thing does he withhold from those whose walk is blameless. Father, I thank you that you are not looking for reasons to withhold your goodness from them.
Yes,
For you are a generous God. James 1:17 says, every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights. God, today I pray that they recognize your blessings all around them. Open their eyes to see your hand at work in their life. Your word says in Psalm 128, verses 1 and 2, blessed are all who fear the Lord, who walk in obedience to him. You will eat the fruit of your labor. Blessings and prosperity will be yours. May their efforts bear good fruit. May their gifts make room for them. May opportunities find them. Surround them today with your divine favor. Favor in relationships, favor at work, favor in their finances, favor in their decisions, favor in places they never imagined. Father, I pray they will walk through this day with confidence, knowing that your goodness is going before them. Your word says in Psalm 23, verse 6, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. May goodness follow them today. Lord, I pray that you fill their heart with joy. Your word says in Psalm 16, verse 11, that in your presence there is fullness of joy. Father, help them to expect good things from you. Your word says in Psalm 27:13, I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Thank you for your endless love. I thank you for all that you have done, all you were doing, and all that you continue to do in our life, Jesus. I pray all these things in your name. Amen. Have a blessed night.
Ooh, that was good. That was good. Do we need to play it again? Or did everybody that's in here, it was 96, 89. We all right? Some people came in while it was going. I hope you all get it and receive it and apply it and manifest it. Oh, yeah, that was good, man. I've had a long week. I done shed some tears this week. And I am going to trust in the Lord with all my heart and lean not to my own understanding, that the truth pertaining to Carmelo Anthony, the lies, the deceit, the cover-ups, let everything that's evil drop and fall and be revealed. Let the truth prevail. Let the law of the land prevail. Okay, amen. In Jesus' name, amen. The law that's written is on his side. And that the judgment that he got is not. It's not just. It's evil. It's evil. It is absolutely evil. But I'm going to keep this on. I'm trying to get back to where I had it. Trump, get caught up on Trump. Dump. Hold on, bear with me. We got to get back in there. Make no mistakes about it. I am not going to leave Carmelo Anthony hanging. I will speak on him as well. I just got to figure out how I'm going to make it play out. But you can best believe I'm going to work it out. I am not going to leave him. I got to pick up the Epstein files again, because it's all evil rooted. It's all about the threatening to take back Washington after shocking teen brawl. A lot of this stuff is staged and planted. I don't believe nothing about old boy. Nothing. Hold on, bear with me. Let me get it together. I got lost in some more sauce and got behind a little bit, but give me a minute. I will be back on. I'm trying to get to Clinton. I really wanted to open up with him. I'm so far behind. I've been away this long. Oh my. Really? I've been gone from Trump this long? Lord, have mercy. I didn't realize it's been this long. Okay, well, we under attack.
All right, everybody, we have some good news and we have some bad news. Let's start off with the bad news.
Oh, I remember
Donald
this.
Trump has just ramped up his attacks against the media and his attacks against free speech to a new level.
Okay,
The
yeah, I
National
remember
White
that
House.
one. I remember that one. Okay, hold on. I remember that. Let me start with Midas then. Trump got rude awakening at the end of the finals. His name is taken off. Let's see about this. Let's start here.
That was a sleuth camera angle catching the moment that his name was officially taken off the Kennedy Center, something that Donald Trump hoped to avoid, because here's the deal. For
His
those
name
who
got
tuned in
taken
yesterday,
off.
you probably noticed that more than 8 hours passed as crews erected a massive scaffolding outside of the Kennedy Center. And all the while, I remember thinking, this feels so incredibly unnecessary. Just put a guy in a boom lift, pluck the letters off, and be done with it. It's not that hard. But as the hours passed and day turned into night, it became clear why they were going that route. It's because the scaffolding was going to be covered by a massive tarp to conceal the entire process.
Ooh. What was the secret? Hold on.
In other words, the entire day was spent erecting scaffolding, not to strip the letters, something that, again, 30 minutes in a boom lift could accomplish. It was to conceal the view with a curtain because Trump couldn't handle the optics of the letters of his name being plucked off the building. My God.
He couldn't
The reality
handle
is that Trump's
seeing
name
that
was
his
up on
name
the
was
Kennedy
taken off.
Center,
Oh, it broke
brought
his
down,
heart.
slapped it right there for the world to see. Proud, bold, shameless. But taking it down, workers unfurled a huge curtain to obscure the actual removal, because God forbid the American public gets to watch the consequences of a court ruling play out in real time. God forbid there is footage of the name coming down letter by letter. We can't have that, because that might look bad for the president. So instead, let's turn this whole thing into a giant, all-night Broadway production, starring Donald Trump's ego with a supporting role from a tarp. Just a quick note here to say that if you appreciate my work, which is and always will be 100% free, a small ask is if you could please pre-order my new book, The Day After, which explores how Democrats must finally wield power if they're fortunate enough to get it back. I'll also be on tour in DC, New York, and LA mid-July. You can grab tickets to the tour, and you can pre-order the book at the same link, which I'll put on the screen and in the post description of this video. You can also find them at briantylercohen.com/book. Again, I'll never
Shout out to
paywall a single
Brian.
piece of content, but this is the one time that I'll ask for some support for a book that I really think meets this moment. Thanks so much. Center for the Performing Arts. Then, without congressional approval, an up Performing Arts. Then, without congressional approval, side of the building said the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Until December 19th, the letters on the side of the building said the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Then, without congressional approval, an upper line of letters was added to say the Donald J. Trump and. They did that in one day. The day after the board vote. Boom. His
Oh,
name is
wow.
up on the building. No drama, no scaffolding, no midnight tarp operation. Just slapped it right up. But removing it? Well, that requires a weeks-long legal battle, a last-minute court application, a DOJ intervention, a full scaffolding rig, and a curtain the size of a football field. Because apparently, putting your name on things is easy when you've got no shame. But having it ripped off by a federal judge, that requires a cover-up. Literally. Now, let's talk about these legal maneuvers because they tell you everything you need to know about this administration's relationship with the law, which is to say, they treat it as a mere suggestion. U.S. District Court Judge Christopher Cooper ruled last month that Trump's name was illegally added to the Kennedy Center and ordered it removed by the end of the day on June 12th. So, on June 12th, yesterday, Friday, Cooper denied the Trump administration's last-minute request for a stay of his injunction pending appeal, meaning the original deadline remained in place. So the court said no, fine. Then the Justice Department asked the Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit to stay Cooper's ruling and allow the president's name to stay up. But in a one-page order, a panel of appellate judges rejected that request for an immediate stay. Denied again. Two courts both said no. And then, shortly after midnight, the Trump-run Kennedy Center asked the judge to extend the deadline until noon the following day, citing the storms for delaying the work. So, to summarize, Trump's team filed a stay, got denied, filed an emergency appeal, got denied, filed for a midnight extension because of the thunderstorms, and oh, by the way, crews started removing it from the front of the building around 3 a.m. under a tarp after 2 denied appeals, after missing the deadline, after months of fighting in court to keep 4 words on a building that a federal judge said he had no legal right to put there in the first place. This is a guy who would rather mobilize the Justice Department, the Court of Appeals, and a team of construction workers in the dead of night than simply admit he lost. And why did he lose? Because as District Court Judge Christopher Cooper wrote on May 29th, Congress gave the Kennedy Center its name, and only Congress can change it. Period. The Kennedy Center was established and named via a 1964 law passed by Congress and signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson, memorializing President John F. Kennedy, who was assassinated 2 months prior. It is a congressional memorial to an assassinated president, and Trump's hand-picked board just decided to add his name to it anyway? Because why not? Because what's a literal federal law when your ego is on the line? In fact, here's Norm Eisen, who brought the case that led to the removal of Trump's name, reacting to his court win just weeks earlier.
Brian, one of the signature features of the Trump administration.
It's so easy to become a podcaster with Riverside. First, go to Riverside and open an account. When you're ready to record,
like so many other authoritarian regimes around the world, is corruption. And we just won the biggest victory yet in court against Donald Trump's corruption. Summary judgment, a final ruling that his name has to come off the Kennedy Center. He corrupted that institution. And then, as if that weren't enough, it was a 1-2 punch. The court also preliminarily enjoined the closure of the Kennedy Center and the suspension of programming there until the law is complied with, if it ever can be. So, major win against Donald Trump, together with all the other victories we've had defending the rule of law, protecting our elections, a biggie against Trump corruption.
But here's the thing. This Kennedy Center saga isn't just some absurd story about a curtain.
Every little thing he get away with it pushes it closer to the takeover. So everything we knock down is good. Y'all please hit the like button.
His portrait in federal offices.
Please hit the like button. Double tap the face of your phone device or hit the 3 dots at the top right corner.
This is someone who spent 2 terms obsessing over his name on buildings, his face on currency, his portrait in federal offices, while the American people are getting crushed. Costs are surging, gas is rising, tariffs are tanking retirement savings, and the president's singular, unique focus is making sure that you don't get to watch his name come off a building in real time, because God forbid.
Isn't that crazy?
That is what vanity governance looks like. Not policy or leadership or a vision for the country, just an unending, exhausting, all-consuming obsession with the brand of Donald Trump, and an equally unending terror of anything that threatens it. The curtain last night wasn't just covering the Kennedy Center facade, it was covering the fact that a federal court just told the President of the United States that he broke the law, and he still couldn't bring himself to comply with even a modicum of dignity. Strong leaders don't need giant tarps to hide their failures. Strong leaders don't spend their nights appealing to multiple courts over the letters of their name on a building. Strong leaders don't get to put their name on memorials to murdered presidents in the first place. But this is what we've got. A guy so consumed by the reflection of his own name that he will turn the entire machinery of the federal government into a stage crew. just to make sure that nobody gets to have a clean shot of a curtain coming down. This shot, to be clear.
He didn't want y'all to see his name coming down. Tap.
Before you go, I'm very excited to announce that I've written a new book titled The Day After: How to Wield Power in a Post-Trump World. The book explores what is, in my opinion, the single most important theme that we're dealing with in politics today and moving forward: power.
What I got next? Let's see. I got to catch up. Thank you, Brian. Shout out to you. He freaks out over the ending of his term.
Evolution.
Baby, we'll freak on in. We rest to get you up out of here.
A remarkable Democratic Congressmember Jamie Raskin, the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, is responding to Donald Trump's latest midnight threats. Donald Trump was posting all night that Jamie Raskin, the Democratic congressman, needs to be expelled. Donald Trump was literally seething with rage and sweating out his fear. He was saying that Jamie Raskin's
sweating out
life, who worked endlessly during my
Ooh, I bet you that was funky.
Me, and he goes, we need to expel
oh Lord, I bet you that was funky. That woke me up, baby. Sweating out. Oh my God. Can you imagine? Let's go. Hit the like button, y'all. Come on. Sweating out. Lord be Jesus. Sweating out. Them pores. Come on.
Responding to Donald Trump's latest midnight threats. Donald Trump was posting all night that Jamie Raskin, the Democratic congressman, needs to be expelled. Donald Trump was literally seething with rage and sweating out his fear. He was saying that Jamie Raskin's a loser in life who worked endlessly during my first term to impeach me. And he goes, we need to expel the bum. Congress can never be great with people like this. And he was reposting Mark Levin, who said the House should trigger the expulsion process against Jamie Raskin. He's leading a plot to impeach the president if the Democrats take the House. He led the prior two impeachments against the president. He's pushed for his resignation in the past, also was involved in twisting the 14th Amendment to ban candidate Trump from the ballots. Like invoke Article 1, Section 5, Clause 2, and expel Jamie Raskin. I want to bring in Democratic Congressmember Jamie Raskin to respond to Donald Trump's latest threats, because it certainly seems that Congressmember Raskin's living rent-free in Donald Trump's head. I also want to speak to Congressmember Raskin about some of his major pieces of legislation to block Donald Trump's $1.8 billion slush fund, as well as Donald Trump's attempt to basically give himself a super pardon from all of his past tax evasion and any other conduct relating to taxes or any other misconduct. That was one of the things that was put in the settlement that Donald Trump made with himself. Let's bring in Democratic Congressmember Jamie Raskin. Congressmember Raskin, it's great to see you. And so
it's great to be here.
Donald Trump's been posting a lot about you. He's been posting reposts of Mark Levin talking a lot of stuff about you, saying you need to be expelled, and saying that, you know, they're terrified that when Democrats take over the House, you'll be leading a third impeachment against him, so they got to get rid of you now. And I mean, he's posting it late at night, so you're clearly living rent-free in his mind. I guess before we get into some of the other pieces of legislation that you're pushing forward, what's your immediate response to kind of Trump's constant posts about saying you need to be expelled from the House?
Well, it tells me we had a very fine week in terms of stopping his absurd and lawless $1.776 billion political slush fund, which we've been working on in the Judiciary Committee. And it tells me we had a great week in terms of exposing their utterly ridiculous and devious attack on the Southern Poverty Law Center. So his attack on me seemed to be kind of coming out of the blue. We don't quite know exactly what triggered him, but it was a rough week for the president in the Judiciary Committee. And so, I don't know, maybe he's got Raskin derangement syndrome or something. But the bottom line is we're doing our job. We're going to get back to work. We're on the front lines of this struggle against corruption and authoritarianism, and we're not going to be deterred by that. This is not middle school where he thinks he can expel someone for questioning his authority. And look, we're in the middle of a war that he started illegally and unconstitutionally, and there are a lot of dead Americans and a lot more dead Iranians, and he should really be focused on that. These are very serious times, and so I'm going to try not to take the bait, as tempting as it is, to go back and forth. I will just say, though, in his attacking me on the impeachment stuff and what he describes as a loser cause, he was impeached by the House of Representatives in right after the insurrection in 2021, in January 2021 on the 13th. And it was a vote of 232 to 197, and all of the Democrats and 10 Republicans joined us. And so when we went over to the Senate to prosecute the case, and I was the lead impeachment manager, he may be recalling now that it was a 57 to 43 vote to convict him. Now, I know he's proud of that because that fell just short of the 2/3 requirement. But most presidents of the United States would not be proud of the fact that they have 50% of the presidential impeachments in history, and 57% of the U.S. Senate voted to say that he had incited a violent insurrection against our Constitution.
Yeah, it's a good point. I don't think people remember how close he actually was to being convicted as well, but for some of the people, by the way, who he now attacks. I mean, there could have been a conviction there in the Senate. Now, talk to us about your legislation that you're pushing forward on the slush fund for the insurrectionists, because one of the things that I find fascinating is this macro picture that gives you insight into, I think, Donald Trump's entire life as a con artist and a scammer, which is he doesn't want to reduce anything to writing. Even when he's cornered, he always wants to do a trust me, bro, I got this.
Right.
And then he always tries to wiggle out of it and say, because his word is meaningless. I mean, we see it in Iran where it's like, okay, reduce it to writing. Make the deal. Stop saying you have concepts of frameworks. Even Judge Brinkema was speaking to the DOJ lawyer on the slush fund case, and she was saying to the DOJ lawyer, look, okay, I hear you. You're saying to me that you're going to stop the slush fund, so why aren't you putting it in writing? And the DOJ lawyer goes, I don't know. And Judge Brinkema was like, don't you find it weird that you don't know that, and this is a pretty big case, and you're saying you don't know why you don't want to put that in writing? Very suspicious.
I mean, the day after Todd Blanche appeared in the Republican caucus before an outraged, scandalized membership, and he promised them it was going nowhere, we're not moving forward, and so on. The very next day, Donald Trump said, I love the idea, we're going forward, we're going to make this happen, and so on. So you can't trust these people, even when they do commit it to writing, but at least have the decency to commit it to writing, and don't think we're going to, fall for all of these verbal disclaimers of interest in proceeding. In any event, we are the Article 1 branch of government in Congress. We appropriate money. It's up to us at this point to both completely defund their fraudulent settlement and their anti-weaponization fund, but also to affirmatively declare that no federal taxpayer dollars should go to the purposes of paying the insurrectionists, the Proud Boys, and the Oath Keepers. For one thing, it's unconstitutional. If you read Section 4 of the 14th Amendment, it says that no money may be appropriated for the purposes of paying for insurrection against the Union. And of course, that came out of the Civil War period. So that's an emphatic categorical point. But also, we're saying the president should not be able to make a deal with himself. This is basically Trump versus Trump, and guess who wins in litigation like that? This is a totally fraudulent, collusive litigation and totally fraudulent, collusive settlement, which is why the judge in Florida yanked the whole thing back. They had tried to dismiss the case, and she said, no way, I think this is a fraud on the court, and it's going to be a fraud on the country. Now we got two different federal courts trying to throw the brakes on it, and Judge Brinkema just said there shall be no money going out of this fund, and we're going to try to make the same thing happen by passing a robust bipartisan legislation in Congress that we hope lots of Republicans will join us on, saying that the president should not be allowed to settle any cases with himself, for his family, or for his cabinet members, or for his political appointees. If they think they've got a real case that can sustain judicial scrutiny and they want to go to court, fine, let them go to court. But we cannot allow them to settle their own cases against themselves. And we saw what happened with Michael Flynn. They did that with Michael Flynn. Michael Flynn actually lost his case about selective prosecution or malicious prosecution. He lost it, and then still they gave him $1.25 million just as a handoff from the Department of Justice. And the same thing with Carter Page, who got $1.25 million. Enrique Tarrio's out there saying, I don't need the anti-weaponization fund. I'm going to get my money from the judgment fund. So we need to cut off that spigot immediately in Congress.
Can I get y'all to hit the like? It's 128 people in here. Please hit the like button. Or double tap those three,
The fact
the
that
face
he
of your
did
phone.
this super
Or those three
pardon
dots at the
settlement
top.
with himself, with the IRS, waiving all past tax liability, to me, that was one of the main things that he was after anyway, because, you know, he's been railing about these audits for a long time. What I worry is that I know people have talked about the number as $100 million that it potentially is waiving in terms of what the IRS was looking at. But as I read that waiver in California, we call it a 1542 waiver, any and all conduct, you know, that predates it. So what I worry too is all of these quid pro quo deals he's been doing with the UAE and the crypto and all of this stuff now, where he would normally have to pay capital gains or whatever it would be, he's not going to pay those, because the way I read the language, you could do a look back of all tax liability that predates it, and knowing him, why wouldn't he claim all of the billions of dollars that he's made during these first 2 years in office? He doesn't have to pay taxes on that stuff, and so it's a waiver of that. So to me, the number that he could be waiving, just take the best case scenario, capital gains, classification, 25%. If he made $2 billion, we could be talking about $600 million in taxes that he's not going to pay.
Yeah, but he's made $4 billion at least, so it's double that amount. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars in taxes he's escaping. And by the way, I thank you for reading it, because as you saw, it's not just taxes. This nullifies any liability for the president, his family, and his businesses for any criminal, civil, or tax violation, or any other administrative law violation. So Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, bribery, embezzlement, insider trading, as you say, other violations of the Domestic Emoluments Clause. He's not allowed to take any money from the federal government, but if he took that $1.8 billion slush fund, that's money that's taxable to him, but they're just trying to nullify all of it and wipe the slate clean. And what's interesting about it is that none of that has anything to do with what his original case was about. His original case was trying to sue the federal government because a private third-party government contractor had leaked information about thousands of people's tax returns, including Trump's, and everybody has lost their case in trying to get paid for that. Now, the guy who did that, he obviously should not have done that, Charles Littlejohn, is in jail. He's in federal prison for 5 years, but there's no private right of action against it. And Todd Blanche, despite the fact that the Department of Justice had been winning on all of those cases, refused to advance a very clear motion to dismiss on that basis. And he also refused to advance a motion to dismiss on the basis that the statute of limitations had run. As all the IRS lawyers were saying, this was many months too late after the expiration of the statute of limitations. Todd Blanche was not acting as a lawyer, as you say, for the American people or for the government. He was acting as a lawyer, as always, for Donald Trump. He just happens to be getting his salary paid by the U.S. government.
Yeah, Trump was the president when the data leak took place, too. It'd be like the head of Microsoft suing Microsoft for a data leak of Microsoft stuff while you were the CEO, and then paying yourself $10 billion and settling it for yourself. And not, I mean, it's the most deranged stuff. Before we go, though, Congressman, I want to talk to you about the National Democracy Summer Program. I know this is a big deal and very important to you. What should our audience know about that?
So we need a whole new generation of democratic organizers and leaders across the country, and our program recruits them in every state in the union. Last summer we had more than 1,000. We're hoping this summer we'll have more than 2,500 of them working in House races and Senate races. But we start off the day with lectures. We have a whole curriculum on the fight for democracy and freedom in America historically, and the fight for democracy and freedom today. So We have Tim Snyder. We have Heather Cox Richardson. We've got Benny Thompson. We got Maxwell Frost, who's the co-chair of the program with me. And we talk about the fights for voting rights and democracy and women's reproductive freedom and so on that we've been through. And then we have people like Mark Elias come in and talk about the fight for the right to vote. Today, our struggle against the Roberts Court and the racist gerrymandering of our congressional districts and their dismantling of majority African American districts throughout the South. And then these young people are spending the rest of their days knocking on doors, canvassing, registering voters, working for the Democratic tidal wave that we need in order to cleanse all of the corruption and authoritarianism and get America back on track.
Congressmember Raskin, thanks for all you're doing. We appreciate you. Come back soon.
See you real soon. Thanks for everything you guys are doing.
Thank you. Everybody hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers. Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filikowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and
Can I get y'all to hit the like button? Double tap the face of the phone. Please, I'm 36 minutes in. Hit the like button for me, please. Hey, room shaker. What in the world? Okay, let's go. Now I'm gonna go back and get caught up on the trueness of what's really going on. So if you've seen it before, just bear with me. I haven't. I've been gone for a little over a week. So I'm trying to get caught up. Okay. Let's go.
The news comes across that John Bolton, let me tell you something, and all
I remember Bolton. I remember this one, so I don't need this one. I remember Bolton. Y'all missed a good old prayer coming in. So I can remove that one. Let me stick to this topic. I was wondering. Pentagon runs out of money as ceasefires collapse. Consequences Trump didn't see. Okay, let's go.
success. Called it. Now look, I want to talk to you about something that happened this week. Something that didn't make the evening news with the gravity it deserves. On June 4th, Hezbollah's leader Naim Qassem publicly rejected a ceasefire that the President of the United States had already declared a success. Called it absurd, humiliating, and insulting. That's not a negotiating posture. That's a door slamming shut in America's face. And here's the honest truth. When a president announces a deal before the parties agree to it, he doesn't just embarrass himself. He diminishes the weight of every American diplomatic initiative that comes after. Our word is supposed to mean something.
Right.
When I sat across from people who had every reason to distrust each other. In Belfast, in the Balkans, in the Middle East, the one thing we had was credibility. The belief that if Washington said something was happening, it was real. This week, that credibility took a hit. And we'll come back to why that matters. Not just for Lebanon, but for Iran, for Ukraine, for the $30 billion this war is costing us, and for every service member whose training just got cut because we can't pay for all of this
Oh, I
at
remember
once.
this one.
This isn't just one headline. This is a signal about where American leadership stands right now in the world. Now, let me tell you something about context, because without it, you're just watching headlines flash by. Back in November 2024, we had a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, brokered by the United States and France. Imperfect, sure, but it was a framework. Hezbollah would pull back north of the Litani River. The Lebanese armed forces would take control of the south, and Israel would gradually withdraw. Standard post-conflict architecture. I've seen versions of it work before. Not perfectly, but they hold if both sides believe the guarantor is serious. Here's where it went wrong. Israel carried out over 600 strikes on Lebanon between that November ceasefire and March 2026, 2 per day on average. Hezbollah never fully withdrew. And then on February 28th, the United States and Israel launched strikes on Iran, killing Supreme Leader Khamenei. 2 days later, on March 2nd, Hezbollah fired rockets into Israel in retaliation. And just like that, Lebanon was at war again. The Trump administration held 4 rounds of talks in Washington between Israeli and Lebanese delegations. And here's the structural flaw I want you to understand. Hezbollah was never at the table. Not once. They weren't invited. They weren't consulted through formal back channels. You had the fighting party excluded from the peace process. Let me tell you from experience. At Camp David in 2000, the hardest work happened with the people who didn't want to be in the room. You don't get peace by only talking to the people who already agree with you. And this is where things start to get complicated, because what happened this week was entirely predictable. Now let me walk you through what actually happened. On Monday, June 2nd, a partial understanding was announced. Israel would refrain from bombing Beirut in exchange for Hezbollah not attacking Israel. Trump posted on Truth Social that he'd spoken to Netanyahu and to highly placed representatives of Hezbollah, and that all shooting will stop. He wrote, "Let's see how long that lasts. Hopefully it will be for eternity." Then the same day, Netanyahu posted that if Hezbollah doesn't stop attacking, Israel will strike Beirut. And there's a report confirmed by Axios that Trump called Netanyahu and said, quote, "You're fucking crazy. I'm saving your ass." Called him ungrateful. Told him to turn his troops around. I've had tense calls with foreign leaders, but you do that privately. You don't govern by outburst and then claim you've achieved peace. By Wednesday, June 4th, a more formal agreement was announced from Washington. A renewed ceasefire with pilot security zones inside southern Lebanon, where the Lebanese armed forces would take exclusive control. No maps were provided, no timeline, no mechanism for enforcement. Hours later, Hezbollah leader Naim Qassem issued a public letter rejecting the entire thing. He called it futile, humiliating, and said it amounted to surrender. He demanded something the deal never mentioned: Israeli withdrawal from Lebanese soil. Meanwhile, on the ground, Israeli strikes continued. 5 people killed in the Bekaa Valley. A UNIFIL peacekeeper, a Serbian sergeant named Milovan Jovanovic, killed by mortar fire near Marjayoun. And then Trump, asked by reporters, said Hezbollah hasn't rejected the deal. And in another moment, he defined ceasefire as shooting in a more moderate manner. That's not diplomacy. That's a president redefining words because reality didn't match his announcement. The whole world is watching. Allies are calibrating. Adversaries are taking notes. Let me identify the specific leadership decisions that brought us here. First, the administration chose to separate Lebanon from the Iran negotiations, even though Tehran explicitly said they're linked. Iran's foreign ministry stated that any agreement must include a halt to attacks on all fronts, especially Lebanon. You cannot ignore it and then act surprised when the architecture collapses. That's not deal-making. That's denial. Second, the decision to announce success before the key party agreed. When Trump posted that all shooting will stop, before Hezbollah had signed anything, he painted himself into a corner. Now the American position looks unreliable. Every future negotiation starts from a weaker place. Third, the approach to Netanyahu. Cursing at a prime minister on the phone, then praising him on social media, then giving Israel freedom of action to keep striking. That tells everyone that American red lines don't exist. Israel's defense minister said openly that military operations would continue for the time being. That's not a ceasefire. That's permission to keep fighting with American cover. And here's the honest truth about what ties all this together. This wasn't a failure of complexity. It was a failure of patience. The administration wanted any deal, something to announce, something to put on television. A real deal requires understanding the other side's red lines before you walk into the room. It requires back channel work. It requires accepting that sometimes the hardest part of peace is the silence before the breakthrough. Now let me broaden this out, because this isn't just about one failed agreement. Start with the money. The Pentagon told Congress the war on Iran has cost $25 billion, and that's their own lowball number. Economists at Harvard estimate the total economic impact could reach $1 trillion when you factor in gas prices, supply chain disruption, damage to military bases across the Gulf, and long-term veterans care. Gas is at $4.23 a gallon. The Brent crude benchmark is above $120, and the administration has requested a $1.5 trillion defense budget, a 42% increase, the largest expansion in military spending since World War II. Meanwhile, while service members are fighting, while the Navy is warning it may have to cut training programs, while munition stockpiles are being depleted, the Justice Department created a $1.776 billion anti-weaponization fund, taxpayer money, to compensate the president's political allies who claim they were unfairly targeted by the previous administration. When a CNN reporter asked Trump about it on June 3rd, he didn't answer the question. He attacked the network. I don't care what party you belong to. When you're asking Americans to shoulder the highest gas prices in years, when a UNIFIL peacekeeper is dead
Open your
because
big ass mouth and
failed,
answer. Talk.
and your response
Without being
is to
stupid.
create a $1 billion fund for your political friends and attack the press for asking about it, something is deeply wrong with your priorities. And then there's the credibility cost. When a president declares game over and reality says otherwise within hours, every future American negotiating position is weakened. Our allies in Europe, in the Gulf, in East Asia, they're watching and they're asking, can we trust what Washington says? Here's why this week's failure matters politically. The Lebanon ceasefire was meant to pave the way for an Iran deal. An Iran deal was meant to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Reopening the strait was meant to bring down oil prices. Lower oil prices were meant to ease inflation before the 2026 midterm elections. That's the chain. That's why there was desperation for any deal, not the right deal, any deal. With Hezbollah's rejection, that chain is broken. Iran had already suspended talks once over Israeli strikes in Lebanon. Tehran's position is clear: no peace without Lebanon included. The Iran talks have no runway. Oil stays high, gas stays high. The president's approval on cost of living is at 22% in the latest Reuters/Ipsos poll. Now look at Ukraine. On June 3rd, Ukrainian drones struck an oil terminal in St. Petersburg and hit a Russian warship at the Kronstadt naval base. On June 4th, Zelensky published an extraordinary open letter directly to Putin, proposing a face-to-face meeting, a full ceasefire during negotiations, and a prisoner exchange. He wrote, "Do not be afraid to take the path out of this war." That's leadership. And where is the United States? Focused on Iran, distracted by Lebanon, fighting with the press, creating slush funds. Now let me tell you what I think happens next. Scenario 1, Iran suspends nuclear talks in solidarity with Hezbollah. The blockade continues, oil stays above $120, and economic pain deepens globally. That's the most likely near-term outcome. Scenario 2, Israel escalates further in Lebanon. If they interpret Hezbollah's rejection as license to intensify, we could see a humanitarian catastrophe in southern Lebanon. Over 1 million people are already displaced. Scenario 3, the Pentagon is forced to cut readiness. You can't sustain a $2 billion per day war, a $1.5 trillion defense budget request, and a $1.776 billion political slush fund without something breaking. That weakens us not just in the Middle East, but vis-a-vis China, which is watching all of this very carefully. Scenario 4, the administration pivots to blame. Blame Hezbollah, blame Iran, blame the media, blame Democrats. Rather than recalibrating strategy, you double down on the narrative. That's the easiest path politically, but the most dangerous strategically. But there is a fifth possibility, an off-ramp. If Washington were willing to engage indirectly with Hezbollah through intermediaries, Qatar, Oman, perhaps Turkey, And if they accepted that Lebanon and Iran must be linked and tied Israeli withdrawal to a phased disarmament timeline with real verification, you could build something. Not quickly, not easily, but you could build it. What it requires is humility, multi-party engagement, patience, and accepting that sometimes the best deal is the one nobody can take credit for on social media. Let me close with this. American foreign policy works best, it always has, when it's credible, consistent, and patient. When our word means something. When our allies know what to expect. When our adversaries understand that our commitments are real, not performative. What concerns me about this week isn't any single failure. It's the pattern. A pattern where announcements replace agreements, where the need for a headline overrides the need for a strategy, where the president says game over and reality contradicts him within hours. And then, rather than acknowledge reality, we redefine words. A ceasefire is shooting in a more moderate manner. That sentence should trouble every American, regardless of party, because when that happens, when a democracy's leader declares victory that doesn't exist, it erodes public trust in our institutions. It emboldens adversaries who learn they can say no and face no consequences.
Hey, Johnny.
It exhausts allies who need to plan around something real. And it tells the world that America's word is negotiable, that our commitments are provisional,
We ain't
that our
solid.
leadership is about the news cycle, not the next decade. Here's what I want to leave you with. We've recovered from diplomatic setbacks before. After Vietnam, after Iran-Contra, after moments when our credibility was damaged. But we recovered because leaders eventually chose honesty over spectacle, strategy over sound bites, the national interest over the news cycle. That's what I'm asking for. Not perfection. Nobody achieves it. But seriousness, accountability, a willingness to say, this is hard. We haven't solved it yet. And here's what we're going to try next. That's not weakness. In my experience, that's the only kind of strength that lasts. We've been through harder things than this, but we got through them by being honest about what went wrong. And that's still available to us if we demand it. Not through anger, not through despair, but through engaged, informed participation in this democracy we all share. That's all I've got. Thank you for listening.
Okay, let's go on to the next one I got. Y'all please hit the like button, double tap the face of the screen, get those likes up. It is 1:55 a.m. If you want to get caught up with me, I'm going to need for you to hit those three dots at the top right corner. Trump freaks out. I'm trying to get caught up. I was on the Carmelo Anthony.
Is fully prepared for. You know, I've been in public life long enough to know that every once in a while, something happens in American politics that doesn't fit neatly into anybody's playbook. And I think we're watching one of those moments right now. Now look, I'm not here to tell you what to think. I never liked it when people did that to me, and I'm not about to start doing it to you. But I am here to ask you to think, really think about what just happened. Because it touches on some things that matter deeply to this country. We're talking about addiction. We're talking about redemption. We're talking about the power of media, the dignity of the presidency, and whether or not we still have the ability in America to see a human being instead of a political target. And I'll tell you something else. This story has implications for 2028 that nobody in either party is fully prepared for. So let me walk you through it, because the details matter, and some of them are going to surprise you. I've spent my whole life believing that democracy works best when people actually listen to each other, when they engage with facts instead of slogans. And what we just witnessed, whether you like it or not, is a test of whether we can still do that. Whether we can look at something unexpected and evaluate it honestly instead of just reaching for the nearest talking point. So stay with me here, because this is one of those stories where the deeper you look, the more you find. And some of what you find might challenge you, regardless of which side you're on. For years, Hunter Biden existed in American politics as a name, not a person. He was a chyron on cable news, a line in a congressional subpoena, a photograph passed around committee hearings. And let me tell you something from personal experience. I know what it's like when your family becomes a weapon in somebody else's political arsenal. I watched it happen to people I love. It's one of the cruelest parts of public life, and it doesn't get easier, no matter how many times you go through it. Now, the Republicans needed Hunter as a villain. That was the strategy. And politically speaking, I understand why. You go after what you think hurts your opponent the most. But here's what a lot of people on my side of the aisle don't like to admit. Many Democrats needed Hunter to stay quiet too. He was a liability, a complication, a name you mentioned in a whisper. Nobody, and I mean nobody, expected this man to walk onto the biggest social media platform in the world and simply say, "I'm Hunter Biden. You've never actually heard from me." Now that line alone should make everybody stop and think, and we'll come to why in a moment. But first you need...
Now I've asked. Okay, y'all, I need for y'all to double tap the face of y'all screen. It's 2 dots. I mean, hit like this if you're on your phone, or hit those 3 dots at the top right corner. I mean, it's real easy. It's too late for y'all to be playing. I'll shut it down. Believe that. Better ask somebody in the comment section. Will she shut it down? Yes, she will. Okay. Okay.
And we'll come back to why in a moment. But first you need to understand the context. This happened around May 19th, 2026. A few days later, he sat down with Candace Owens, a woman who had spent years calling him every name in the book, for a nearly 2-hour conversation. And whether you thought that interview was brave or reckless, it changed the entire conversation. Overnight, the person both parties had been talking about started talking back. So let me walk you through exactly what happened, because the timeline matters. Hunter reactivated his account around May 19th, dropped that first post, and within days sat down with Candace Owens for an interview that was released on May 21st. Now, in that conversation, Owens actually apologized to him, said she felt guilty for reducing him to a caricature, for calling him a crackhead without ever considering the human being behind the addiction. And Hunter's response was disarming. He said, "The truth of it is, I was a crackhead." No spin, no deflection. He marked 7 years of sobriety on June 1st. Then the posts started coming, hundreds of them, self-deprecating, funny, sharp. When somebody accused him of leaving cocaine at the White House, he fired back, "I would never have forgotten my drugs." By early June, he had nearly 600,000 followers and individual posts pulling millions of views. And here's where things start to get complicated. President Trump responded. From the Oval Office, the sitting president addressed a private citizen's social media activity. He dismissed Hunter's checkered past. Hunter hit back. "I'm 28 felonies, 6 bankruptcies, and an Epstein bromance short of his checkered past." Then on June 4th, Trump posted a doctored image on Truth Social. He took a photo Hunter had shared of himself sketching, a personal moment about recovery, and edited it to show Hunter drawing a portrait of Trump with the words, "Greatest President." Now, I want you to hold that fact in your mind, because we're going to come back to what it means for the presidency itself. Let me tell you something, and I want to be careful here because this is where I part ways with a lot of folks on my own side. I am not going to stand here and simply celebrate what Hunter Biden is doing. Now, do I respect the courage it takes to own your addiction in front of the entire world? Absolutely. As a man who knows what public humiliation is like, and believe me, I know. I understand what it costs to stand up and say, "This is who I am, and I'm not hiding anymore." That takes real strength. But here's the honest truth. Redemption is not
So y'all not gonna hit the like
the
button?
same as endorsement.
So y'all not gonna hit the like button?
endorsement. That Candace Owens interview, it had real human moments, but it also had this is who I am, what public humiliation feels like, and believe me, I know. I understand what it costs to stand up and say, this is who I am, and I'm not hiding anymore. That takes real strength. But here's the honest truth. Redemption is not the same as endorsement. That Candace Owens interview, it had real human moments, but it also had moments where Hunter indulged conspiracy theories.
How is this legal?
They bonded over distrust of institutions, over this idea of an Epstein elite class pulling the strings. And I've got to tell you, building bridges by agreeing that the whole system is rigged is not the same thing as fixing the system. Democrats cannot afford to confuse viral popularity with political leadership. We've got to remember, I learned this the hard way in my own presidency. There is a very big difference between winning the news cycle and actually governing. A good tweet is not a policy. A clever comeback is not a platform. And if we let the excitement of this moment blind us to the parts that should concern us, we're making a mistake we'll regret. Now I want to step back and talk about something that I think has gotten lost in all the noise. And it's maybe the most important part of this entire story. A sitting president of the United States used his official platform to create and share a digitally altered image mocking a private citizen's personal recovery post. Let me say that again so it sinks in. The President of the United States, the man sitting in the Oval Office, the office I once held, took time out of his day to doctor a photograph and use it to ridicule someone's sobriety journey. Now,
wow,
look,
really?
I had opponents who said terrible things about me. Some of them were right, and some of them were wrong. Private citizen, because they got the better of me in a public argument. That's not what the office is for. When you sit behind that desk, you represent every single American, including the ones who can't stand you. And the moment you start using that platform for personal vendettas against private citizens, you're not just diminishing yourself, you're diminishing the institution.
He don't care.
And that should concern every American, regardless of party, because the precedent you set in that office doesn't go away when you leave. It becomes the floor for the next person who sits there. And we should all be asking ourselves, is this the floor we want? Now let's talk strategy. Because both parties have a problem here, and I don't think either one fully sees it yet. For Democrats, Hunter's crossover appeal is real. Former MAGA supporters are publicly praising him. One three-time Trump voter said he wished Hunter would run for president.
Oh, wow.
That's remarkable. And it tells you something important about where a lot of Americans are right now.
Sick of Trump.
They're hungry for authenticity, for somebody who doesn't sound like they're reading off a teleprompter. But here's the danger. If the Democratic Party lets an unvetted, unaccountable, viral personality become its public face, while serious policy work goes undone, we are repeating a mistake we should have learned from in 2016. Celebrity is not qualification. Virality is not vision. For Republicans, the problem is different, but just as real. Trump took the bait. He responded to Hunter Biden the way he responds to every perceived threat. Impulsively, personally, from a position of insecurity rather than strength. And that reveals a vulnerability. When Hunter floated a 2028 run against J.D. Vance and said LFG, it wasn't serious policy, but it forced a response from the most powerful office in the world. That's an asymmetry that should worry any strategist in the Republican Party. The media landscape has changed, and the old playbook of controlling the narrative through cable news isn't working anymore. The battlefield has moved, and not everybody has caught up. So where does this go from here? Let me tell you how I see it, and I think there are basically three roads ahead. The first possibility is the simplest. This fades. The viral moment passes, the posts slow down, Hunter goes back to his art and his recovery, and 6 months from now we're talking about something else entirely. That's possible, and frankly it might be the healthiest outcome for everyone involved. The second possibility is more interesting. Hunter becomes a sustained political voice, not necessarily a candidate, but a figure who shows Democrats a different way to communicate. Raw, unpolished, direct, willing to go into hostile territory and talk to people who disagree with him. If he does that responsibly, without the conspiracy theory detours, that could actually be valuable. This country is starving for people who can talk across the divide without losing themselves in the process. But then there's the third road, and this is the one that keeps me up at night. The conspiracy talk deepens. The 2028 speculation becomes real before there's any substance behind it. Democrats, desperate for a fighter, rally around a personality instead of a platform. And we end up right back where we were, mistaking entertainment for governance, confusing the ability to win an argument online with the ability to lead a country. I've seen enough politics to know that the most exciting option is rarely the wisest one. And I'll be honest with you, I think the second scenario is the most likely, but the third one is the most dangerous. Let me leave you with this. What we just watched, this whole extraordinary, messy, very American story, it tells us something important about where we are as a country. A man who was at rock bottom, who the entire political machine tried to use and throw away, stood up and spoke for himself. And millions of people from every part of the political spectrum stopped and listened. That matters. That tells you that Americans are still capable of seeing a human being, even when they've been told to see a monster. And that gives me hope. But hope is not enough. What this country needs right now isn't another viral personality. It needs leaders who can govern, institutions that function, and citizens who can tell the difference between a good tweet and a good policy. So pay attention, stay critical. Don't let anyone on the left or the right tell you that entertainment is the same as leadership. The best thing about America has always been that people get second chances. The real question, is what we do with them. And that's true for Hunter Biden, it's true for this administration, and it's true for every single one of us watching right now.
Okay, I gotta move on to the next one. I'm about to get a little sleepy.
Finals. I was sitting behind that. You know, the last time the New York Knicks were playing in the NBA Finals, I was sitting behind that old Resolute desk in the Oval Office. That was 1999, 27 years ago. And I'll tell you, like a lot of Americans, I've been waiting a long time to see them back on that stage. So when Game 3 came around on June 8th, 2026, a sold-out crowd at Madison Square Garden, the Knicks up 2-0 against San Antonio. That should have been one of those magical nights. The kind of night where New York reminds you why it's the greatest city in the world. 20,000 people packed into the Garden, the anthem playing, the energy building, and then the Jumbotron lands on the President of the United States. Now, what happened next is something I think every American ought to sit with for a minute, regardless of which party you belong to.
The U.S. healthcare system was not built for patients. I'm John Taylor. I'm a psychiatrist, and I'm Chief Medical Officer at Salus Health.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Upton, the Vice President.
Because it tells you something real about where this country is right now. It tells you something about the distance between a leader and the people he's supposed to serve. And it tells you something about what happens when a president stops listening. We'll come back to the details of that moment. But first, I want you to understand the full picture, because the full picture is what matters. This wasn't just about basketball. This was about something much deeper. And if we're honest with ourselves, we've been building toward a moment like this for a while now. Now, let me give you some context here, because context is everything in politics and in life. Donald Trump is a New Yorker. Born in Queens, built his name in Manhattan. That's his city, or at least it used to be. But here's the honest truth. In the 2024 presidential election, Trump got fewer than 839,000 votes in New York City. Kamala Harris got over 1.9 million. And right now, as of this summer, his approval rating is sitting around 35% nationally, near the lowest point of his entire political career. Now look, I've been a president. I know what it's like to walk into a room where not everybody loves you. That happens. It comes with the territory. When you sit in that office, you're the president of everybody. The people who voted for you and the people who didn't. And you've got to carry that weight with some grace. The question isn't whether people disagree with you. They will. The question is whether you're paying attention to what that disagreement is telling you. Whether you're reading the room or just reading your own press clippings. And what happened in the lead up to this game, the security shutdowns, the street closures, the cancellation of traditions that meant the world to everyday fans. That's where things start to get complicated. Because this wasn't just the president going to a basketball game. This became something else entirely. Let me tell you something. Let me just walk you through what actually happened that night, because the facts matter. The NYPD shut down 15 blocks around Madison Square Garden. They put up 10-foot fences. They deployed counter-drone technology. They implemented a strict no-bag policy and airport-style screening for every single fan walking through those doors. People were told to arrive at least 2 hours before tip-off. 2 hours for a basketball game. And the outdoor watch parties, the ones that had become this beautiful community tradition throughout the entire playoff run, where thousands of New Yorkers who couldn't afford tickets would gather outside the Garden and cheer together, those were canceled. Just like that, gone, because of the security perimeter. Now, Trump sat up in owner James Dolan's suite with cabinet secretaries Lee Zeldin, Sean Duffy, and Doug Burgum, plus his granddaughter Kai, Jared Kushner, and Boris Epstein. At 8:36 p.m., his image went up on that jumbotron. He was saluting during the national anthem. And the White House press pool, not CNN, not MSNBC, the official press pool, described the crowd's response as thunderous boos.
Boo.
Thunderous.
Ooh.
The moment that camera cut to Knicks guard Jalen Brunson, those boos turned into wild cheers. Later in the game, cameras caught Trump appearing to fall asleep in the suite. He left early in the second half. And when reporters asked him about it afterward, he said, and I want you to hear this, it was, I think, mostly cheers. Now, we'll come back to why that matters. Here's something I learned in my years in the White House. A president doesn't just show up somewhere. Every time you walk into a room as the leader of the free world, you're making a decision that affects everybody in that room and everybody around it. I went to ball games. I went to disaster sites. I went to funerals and factory floors and town halls in places where people didn't vote for me. And every single time, my team and I asked the same question. What is the cost of our presence, and does the benefit justify it? That's not weakness, that's responsibility. Now, did Donald Trump have the right to go to that game? Of course he did. He's the President of the United States, and he's a Knicks fan. Nobody's disputing that. But having the right to do something and it being the wise thing to do
It's two different
are
things.
two very different propositions. When your president shuts down 15 city blocks, cancels beloved community gatherings, forces thousands of hardworking fans to stand in security lines for hours, and you're sitting at 35% approval in that very city, a thoughtful leader has to ask themselves, who is this serving? A president showing up to a ball game should bring joy. It should feel like a gift to the moment, not a burden on it. You shouldn't need a fortress to watch basketball. And when 20,000 people tell you exactly how they feel, and you walk out and say it was mostly cheers, that's not confidence, folks. That's disconnection. And disconnection in a leader is a dangerous thing. Now, let me tell you something about sports in this country that I think we sometimes take for granted. We've got to remember that for generations, the arena, the ballpark, the stadium, those have been some of the last truly shared spaces in American life. You sit next to somebody you've never met, somebody who might vote differently than you, worship differently, come from a completely different walk of life.
He got booed.
And for 2 or 3 hours, none of that matters. You're just fans. You're cheering for the same team.
Imagine making $453,000 in a single month as an affiliate
Ain't nobody
marketer
trying to hear him, see
without
him, or none
relying
of
on
that.
Google, Facebook, or ClickBank, or creating new accounts on Pinterest, Twitter, TikTok, or Instagram. This may sound like a big claim, but I'm here to show you how.
That's sacred in its own way. And when a president turns a basketball game into a security operation and a political lightning rod, that shared space gets a little smaller. Commissioner Adam Silver tried to handle it with class, said Trump was welcome, called him a genuine fan. Mayor Zohran Mamdani scrambled to put together an alternative watch party at Bryant Park so everyday New Yorkers wouldn't lose their night entirely. Players like De'Aaron Fox from San Antonio called the whole security situation what it was: inconvenient. And this wasn't the first time. Last year's U.S. Open tennis final saw the same kind of disruption. Fans missed the start of the match because of presidential security. And we've got to ask ourselves, is this becoming a pattern? Because the office of the presidency carries enormous weight. And a president who doesn't manage that weight carefully, who doesn't think about the footprint they're leaving on the institutions and traditions that bring us together, that president is doing damage. Not on purpose, maybe, but damage all the same. Now look, I spent decades in politics. I know how the game is played. So let me put on my strategist hat for a minute, because I think it's worth asking. Why did Trump go to that game? Was it pure fandom? Maybe partly. But let me tell you what I think was really happening. Earlier this year, Trump went to the college football championship in Miami. Conservative-leaning crowd, friendly territory, and he got enormous cheers. That's a win. But Madison Square Garden, in the heart of Manhattan, in a city that voted against him more than 2-1, he knew what was coming. I believe he knew. And that raises a question. Was this about basketball, or was this about generating a moment, controlling a news cycle, playing the underdog in hostile territory? I noticed that Bruce Blakeman, Trump's endorsed candidate for the New York governor's race, met with the president before the game. There were cabinet secretaries in that suite. This had layers. This was more than courtside seats. But here's where the strategy falls apart. When the political calculation is that visible, it costs you. And when you're caught appearing to fall asleep in the owner's box and then leave before the game is even over, that doesn't project strength. That projects indifference. You came, you disrupted an entire city's evening, you sat in a glass box above everyone else, and you couldn't even stay for the whole game. That's a bad look. And in politics, looks become narrative fast. And this is where things get really serious, because this night is going to have consequences. In the short term, this story dominated a news cycle that should have belonged to the Knicks and the Spurs, two teams battling for a championship. And instead, the whole country is talking about booze and security fences. In the medium term, this reinforces the narrative that's been building, that wherever Trump goes, disruption follows. And as we head toward the 2026 midterms and the early conversations about 2028, that narrative matters. It sticks. You're going to see other venues quietly start asking questions about presidential attendance. Sports leagues will tighten their protocols. And political expression at sporting events, something we saw explode in that arena, that's only going to grow. Now there's another angle here that nobody in the media wants to say out loud, but I will. The Knicks lost Game 3. They were up 2-0, riding the longest unbeaten playoff streak in years. And they came out flat and lost 115-111. Now, am I saying that's Trump's fault? No. Basketball doesn't work that way. But the disruption to routine, the security chaos, the altered energy in the building, some fans are already connecting those dots, fairly or not. And the deeper cost, the one that worries me most, is to the presidency itself. When a sitting president is thunderously booed in his own hometown and then tells the American people it was mostly cheers, you're chipping away at something fundamental. Truth matters. What people see with their own eyes matters. And the gap between reality and what a leader claims, that's where democratic trust goes to die. But let me leave you with this, because I'm not a man who believes in ending on despair. What I saw at Madison Square Garden on June 8th wasn't a crisis. It was democracy. 20,000 Americans paid for their tickets. They went through those security lines. They stood for the national anthem. And then they exercised the most fundamental right we have in this country. They made their voices heard. Nobody threw anything. Nobody stormed anything. They booed loudly, clearly. And that, my friends, is the system working exactly as it should. There's a difference between respecting the office of the presidency and endorsing the person who holds it. A healthy republic requires the ability to do one without the other. And I think those fans showed us that distinction beautifully. So where do we go from here? We participate. Midterms are coming. Local elections are coming. School board races, city councils, state legislatures. Those races shape your life more than you know. The arena belongs to the people. It always has. And so does this country. No security perimeter changes that. No glass box suite changes that. Now look, the Knicks are still up 2-1. And I've been waiting 27 years for this, just like everybody else. So let's get back to basketball. Let's get back to looking after one another. And let's never forget that when 20,000 Americans speak up at the same time, that sound, whether it's cheers or boos, that's the sound of a nation that still gives a damn. And that, to me, is something worth believing in.
Hold on, let me get what done happened, Lord. What you do, girl? Excuse me, hold on. Oh, excuse me. I have no idea what I just did. I don't know what I just did. What did I just do? My screen is white. Boy, they can sure take my little money, can't they? I need to catch me a Netflix since I've been paying for long, y'all. Okay. Come on, Ben, where you at?
We need to publicly apologize to everyone.
We now have entire federal courthouses tainted by the Trump DOJ grand jury misconduct. We've been covering here on the Midas Touch Network high-profile grand
This gonna
jury
be my last
misconduct
one. Keep
cases.
it under 2
whether we
hours.
talked about James Comey with a prosecutor who
And
wasn't
I'll
even
see
allowed
y'all
to be in the
tomorrow.
room, whether we talked about the Broadview 6, where there was something called vouching taking place, where a federal prosecutor would go to the grand jury and basically say, I'm going to vouch for this. When we saw the transcript, I've never seen anything like this. I'm going to vouch for all of this today. Trust me, I wouldn't bring this to you on a Friday. Let's get out of here quickly. I need you to sign your name. These are bad people. Let's get out of here. Such incredibly high amounts of grand jury misconduct that it's almost like unfathomable. If I put this as a fact pattern on my exams for law students, they'd be like, whoa, this is like the easiest exam professor that I've ever saw. Come on, you got to make it a little bit trickier. So it's shocking to even see. But now it's not, as I've warned, it's not just the high profile cases. We hear about those more, but this pervades now almost every case because these Trump prosecutors are going in front of the grand jury, and it's a combination of maliciousness, arrogance, and incompetence together. And they're just telling the grand jury, hey, let's get out of here today. I got 20 cases. I need 20 indictments super quick, okay? And what's happening now is
You're
you
welcome,
would
Joe.
basically be committing legal malpractice as a defense lawyer if you did not use the fact that the presumption of regularity by the DOJ is thrown out the window. So you go, we need to look at the grand jury transcript. And lawyer by lawyer, defense lawyer by defense lawyer, who gets the grand jury transcript, which you would normally never get. I mean, this is grand jury secrecy stuff. It's not supposed to be turned over. But because the contagion, if you will, is so widespread of tainted grand jury proceedings, criminal defense lawyers are getting these grand jury transcripts, and almost everyone they're getting is showing vouching and misconduct. I'll give you an example right here of what went down. There's a case involving COVID-19 fraud. It's called the Loretto Hospital COVID-19 case. And we just had a federal judge in the Illinois Chicago federal courthouse having to dismiss a very serious case. I'll outline it in a moment. And here's what the judge said. Her name is Judge Sharon Johnson Coleman. She dismissed the case against 2 defendants, and the other 2 defendants, their cases are hanging in limbo. They were charged before the Trump regime, before these ones were brought. So it's possible some of the indictments are going to stick, some aren't. We'll see. But here's what the judge said. We have cases in this building that are in turmoil, and judges are trying to figure out what in the world is going on. She lit into the U.S. attorney in Chicago, Andrew Boutros. Again, the same person who was overseeing the Broadview 6 prosecution, which was tainted by grand jury misconduct. And the federal judge said this is a dysfunctional office and you're basically screwing up every case. Just to explain to you the level of seriousness of this case. So it involves a number of defendants who are involved in allegations of COVID-19 testing fraud. And the allegations are a massive scheme to defraud the government via the Health Resources and Service Administration's program for uninsured patients by submitting fake claims for COVID-19 tests that were never performed. And it's alleged that these defendants accessed personal data from over 150,000 Loretto patients and used it to support fraudulent billing for COVID tests that were never actually done, and that this doctor group allegedly submitted roughly $894 to $900 million in false COVID-19 testing claims between June 2021 and March 2022, when program funds ran out and the government paid a ton of money. And apparently the allegations are these tests were never done, using stolen patient info to build for tests for uninsured patients. And so that's the allegation. Very, very serious stuff. Back in 2025, late 2025, there was an indictment that was unsealed. This case has been proceeding, and you never would have thought, should I look at the grand jury transcripts here? Did they vouch? Did they engage in this misconduct? But now the fallout from the Broadview case, it reminds me of when I used to be a civil litigator. There would be certain cops who would be on like a Brady list. They would be on this list where they were involved in habitual offending. So you would know which cop would do it over and over again. There are prosecutors now who are now being known for all of their cases, basically having tainted grand jury proceedings. And so that's what happened here, that this entire office is now known for going into grand juries and either lying to them or vouching or engaging in heinous conduct. So one by one, criminal defense lawyers, let me get that grand jury transcript. And the judges are like, hey, normally we would say no, but the presumption of regularity is out the window. And we know that every time we see one of these grand jury transcripts, there's a misconduct that's taking place. I want to bring in Harry Littman from Talking Feds. Harry, a lot of these defendants are now off. Their cases got dismissed, and everyone's entitled to a presumption of innocence. Let me be very clear, about that. But these cases are now dismissed for procedural reasons. And these are people being accused of very serious things. And when you talk about law and order, right, Donald Trump's performative, heinous, going after political enemy prosecutions have now opened up Pandora's box to show all these other cases have been tainted by the same type of misconduct. And so now, as you and I predicted, all these prosecutions are getting dismissed.
Myth: home equity loans are the only way to access cash. Reality: here's a better option. I used to think accessing my home equity would mean taking on a traditional loan and dealing with monthly payments. But then I found Point. I got up to $500,000 in cash with no monthly payments, no traditional loans, no income verification, and my FICO score didn't need to be perfect. Plus, Point doesn't change my...
What do you make of it all?
First, let me just say, it's a tragedy. I've tried to make the point repeatedly as this misconduct comes out that the real victims are the public, because it's an important public safety function of the DOJ that now they're not able to do in individual cases. But man, oh man, talk about a total degradation in a specific district. The Northern District of Illinois, Ben, as you know, is one of the most important 5 in the country. Maybe this is a big one, and you have a whole bench here that apparently is just basically lost faith in the prosecutors before them. Everyone's entitled to a presumption of innocence, and yet in a well-functioning Department of Justice, the conviction rate is, as you know, having been a defense lawyer, very, very high. That's because prosecutors choose the cases carefully, bring the ones they can prove, bring the ones where the people have done the offenses, and you come to understand that as a judge. And that's the sort of tailwind that it's great for a prosecutor, but it's also great for the public because, you know, even though some jaundiced people don't believe it, at least in the previous Department of Justice, that's what people were doing. They were working with integrity. So now the word goes out, and the whole thing is just you have prosecutors coming in and judges having an almost reflexive skepticism toward them. The very opposite. You mentioned, so Boutros here, you're totally, that's the U.S. attorney. Now, he's a guy who, unlike some of these sort of political appointees, he was an AUSA in that office for several years, I think 5 or 6. It's a little bit of a Todd Blanche character that way. He knows the difference, should know the difference. But in the Broadview 6 case that you mentioned, they had this horrific misconduct in the grand jury, and Boutros comes out and apologizes to the court, but then proceeds to trash the defendants anyway, some of whose cases were being dismissed, and the judge said, you're snatching defeat from the jaws of victory here, that, you know, that it's irrelevant how bad they are. That doesn't mean with bad defendants you can violate grand jury rules. And now you have, in this case, a different judge saying, calling him out personally and tagging a perception that they ascribe to him that the office is dysfunctional. You know, they are the most repeat players. The federal judges and the U.S. Attorney's Office, they're in front of each other every day. And if all the judges, that's a pretty big court, I think at least a dozen in Northern District of Illinois, who just, when a prosecutor shows up, they think, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be getting it straight here, and what am I expecting from those guys? And the office is dysfunctional. I mean, that is something that harms even in a normal bank robbery case, and something that has no political valence. But they're just thinking these guys are a mess. They're a politicized mess, but also they're feckless, and they can't even do. It is so basic, the kind of, as you were saying, grand jury misconduct that they're doing, and what does it say of an entire office that it could happen? That's the question judges are now asking and thinking, you know, these guys, they are not, there's nothing special about them, and no reason to think that they've done it right, or they're doing their jobs, or even if the people are guilty, no reason to think they're going to hew to the constitutional guidelines. I don't have a presumption of regularity anymore. That is like a body blow, and again, the real impact is to the public, because it means the cases that if there was a presumption of regularity would be accepted, because people are in fact honest and acting in good faith. They used to be in the Department of Justice. Now those people can't necessarily get convicted, and that's a cost borne by the public.
Everybody make sure you subscribe to Harry Littman's YouTube channel. It's called Talking Feds, where I get a lot of my legal news from. So once this video is over, just search Talking Feds. Tell Harry I say hi in the comments, and subscribe here as well. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, Ben. We always love seeing those comments.
New Midas merch. Head to store.midastouch.com today and get yourself the best pro-democracy gear and show your support. That's store.midastouch.com.
Okay, y'all. Good night. I gotta go to sleep.
Every brand drops a new razor every 2 years. New blades, new name,